Mark Tatum, Deputy Commissioner and COO of the National Basketball Association.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Dr. Richard Lapchick, thanks for being with us here on R&R on Sports.
Thank you for having me.
Civil rights icon, Dr. Edwards, how are you today?
I'm doing a heck of a lot better than I deserve, I'll tell you that.
Sports commentator, Scoop Jackson.
Good to be back on with you all.
Ian Griffey Jr., how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How about you guys?
It's R&R on Sports.
R&R on Sports.
R&R on Sports. Back in the house. I'm Howard Robertson.
I'm the great Larry Robinson. What's up, my brother?
You the birthday boy.
Oh, man.
You the birthday
hey, man, listen,
boy.
Listen.
Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday to me, man.
That's nice.
Yeah, man. I'm
That's
like
nice.
25 years old now.
Now you're lying. That is nice. Although I got shoes older than you, but that's a very, very good thing. Another birthday.
Another birthday.
Seems like just yesterday or last year when I gave you a very, very special birthday present, which I hope you still treasure.
No, I don't. I threw all that junk away and I took it down to the old folks'
You threw
home.
my stuff away, man?
I took it down to the old folks' home.
What kind of gratitude
Bro,
is
you
that?
gave me some Depends.
Yes.
Some what is that?
Stuff that you could use.
The help stuff to keep you regular.
Yes.
The diarrhea. What is
Yes.
the laxative medicine.
Yes. And you didn't use it?
And you gave me some prunes, man.
Yes.
That ain't cool, man. See with friends like
I'm
you.
concerned about your health and welfare.
Listen, America. With friends like
your health, education, and welfare. I try to give you
friends
education
like this,
every
see,
week.
He's supposed to be leading the way. He's supposed to be showing me how. He's supposed to be an example. I'm telling you, he's a terrible example.
I buy you prunes. I buy you prunes and you throw them away, right?
No. Actually, I ate all the prunes. I was regular for about 12 days.
Yeah. See, you needed the Depends after that.
He's crazy, man.
What's going on?
Man, I'm sitting here with my Baileys and coffee and chilling. It's Saturday morning, baby, and I am just having a good time.
Sound like they talk down in New Orleans. My son is in Mardi Gras on a dadgum float.
Hey, man.
Fat Tuesday.
Hey, man, listen, let me tell you about the time I was
I raised that boy to go to work.
Listen.
What is he doing?
Let me tell you something. I was in Zulu many years ago. I ain't got to go back.
Oh, really?
They were throwing these coconuts. They were throwing these coconuts. They throwing these
Live
coconuts. I mean, I'm sitting there watching them throw these coconuts
Real
off the floats.
coconuts.
So I'm thinking to myself, there's no way they're throwing real coconut. They must have drilled a hole in it, took the contents out, and painted them beautiful. And then they were throwing these empty coconuts off the side. Listen, man. This dude threw a coconut at me like he was Joe Montana, or let's say Drew Brees.
Oh, he threw it from the float?
He threw it from the float, bruh.
And
I caught this.
Did you catch it?
I caught and I almost bust my face. I mean, literally, that coconut would have knocked me plain out if I hadn't had great hands like the great Jerry Rice. That coconut would have laid me out. I'm like, I'm so glad they outlawed that, man, because I know it's a many people that got messed up. They went to Mardi Gras and thought they were going to be out.
What does it mean that they outlawed it, man, at Mardi Gras? You can do anything you want to down
Hey,
there.
brother,
They can't out.
all
What
you
are they
gotta
going
do
to
is
do?
get hit in the head with
Stop
one
the
of them,
parade
get
and
hit in
take
the
you
head
off
with-
the float?
Get hit in the head with one of them coconuts, bro, and it's all over. Listen, this is R&R on Sports, and man, we got an amazing show for you today. We have the great David West from the Golden State Warrior days. He's now retired, but hey, the brother is here dropping mad science on this show. What you got for him, man?
But we got some talk after this message.
Absolutely.
We gonna talk about a couple
Yeah,
of things. You
whack
kind of
NCAA.
misguided on some things.
Man,
but
the
anyway,
whack NCAA.
back for more R&R on Sports after this.
It's R&R on Sports.
This is MJ, and when I'm not in Chicago hanging out with Scotty and the rest of these guys, I'm always listening to R&R on Sports.
See, I'm the king of the ring. Ring the bell and I'm coming out swing.
Back with more R&R on Sports.
I had to give you a 1-2.
So I'm ignoring that. So it is March Madness time. It is the time that we focus on college basketball, which is arguably
this is Pimp the Black Kids time,
which is arguably the
Pimp
most
the Black Kids time. Pimp the Black Kids time. That's exactly what the NCAA. They should change their name to when we pimp black kids.
So wait a minute. So what's your expectation? What do you expect people to do, even if they agree with you? What do you expect them to do? Not watch college basketball?
Well, my thing is that we know that the NCAA is built on the backs of black kids.
Okay.
The reason that they're able to continue to do this, take the situation with the Adidas group that just got all those kids, from Gatto, Dawkins, and I think the other one was
NCAA basketball is built on. NCAA is built on the backs of kids, period.
Well, it's built on the two revenue-generating sports. There's no greater revenue-generating sports than football
and
basketball.
Right.
Both are dominated by African-American kids.
Finance the other sports.
Exactly. So we're talking about the two main revenue-generating sports that are mainly comprised of young men from urban environments, poor young men. And to me, it's really a travesty when we sit here and allow the NCAA to use these kids under the auspices of amateurism when you get the guy that's the Big Ten leader who gave himself a $20 million raise.
Heard about
when
that.
you have the NCAA March Madness making $1 billion. But yet instead, still, these kids in many cases can't get a meal. I got a kid that we support that's going to a school in North Carolina. This kid went from a very poor background that literally has gone all the way from Memphis, Tennessee to some rare country town in North Carolina. And this kid is calling because he's hungry because he hadn't had anything to eat on the weekends.
He plays ball.
He plays basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that is wrong. If they're making money playing basketball, if they're making money for the universities, these kids deserve to be getting paid. So, that's my only problem.
No, I know. I get it. And I get it. I get the issue. I get the problem.
I'm with Don Yee.
What I'm trying to get, though,
that's
what the
Brady's agent. Go ahead.
Explain that.
Yeah, that's
so
that's
what
Don
I'm trying
Yee.
to get to is what should be in your opinion, the appropriate response for people that are not connected? They're just fans. They're just fans. I mean, is there an expectation for ratings to go down and them to stop watching because that's not going to happen.
Well, I like what the NBA is doing. They're removing this one and done thing. I think there's a great place for college basketball. And I would literally, if there was an opportunity for kids that were good enough to go straight to being paid, these kids don't want to go to school. So therefore, if they don't, take into account,
they don't need to.
Well, no, what I'm saying is these guys that have the ability to be one and done, they should have an opportunity to go make a living. If they're that good, allow them to leave from high school.
Okay.
Don't make them do a year or two of servitude. That's wrong.
What about the ones who are not?
Well, hold on for a second. This is R&R on Sports. And listen, like I've always said, if you want to hear the entire conversation, make sure you go to our podcast. Now, listen, you maybe listen to us on Sirius XM. Shout out to Dan Patrick and Channel 211. You may listen to us to the over 100 radio stations or the 500 military installations. Yet and still, to get the entire show, you got to go to our podcast.
You should have said shout out to Sports Byline Network.
Well, shout out to Sports Byline Network and our buddy over there, Darren Patrick.
Shouting out.
Well, go ahead.
So here's what I'm saying. What do you think if we were to look at the percentage of those who go to the NBA versus those who do not? Okay, what would it be? Of players who play
major college ball.
Major college ball.
I'd imagine it's less than 0.5%.
Less than half of 1%. That's what you're saying.
Less than half of 1% that go from D1 ball to the NBA or D1 ball to the NFL.
Okay, so what kind of future do you see that 99 point whatever percent that do not go to the NBA and cannot monetize their skills that way? What then do they do?
They need a college degree, or they need some kind of trade that will allow them to be gainfully employed, as well as be able to take care of themselves. But they have the
dream, Larry. They've got they are in it.
No. Wait a minute. Let me say this. I was a college basketball player, and I was obsessed with the NBA. I'm not saying that this is the answer for all kids, but there's a select few. It's just like if you're a bonus baby. If you were a prodigy in high school, you can go directly to MLB. You can go directly to Major League Baseball. If you are that good, you should have the ability to monetize your gift. Like this kid, Zion Williamson has no business in college basketball. He has none. Now, here he is. This kid got hurt. This kid is jeopardizing his generational wealth that he could be obtaining right now. If this kid would have came out of high school, went to the league, got drafted, he and R.J. Barrett and Cam Reddish would be making multiple millions of dollars.
But he did not, and he made a commitment to Duke University
because he had no choice.
But he's there, and he made a commitment. Now, I am hoping and praying for his complete healing and all of that. But I do not agree with you that if healthy, if capable and able, he should not finish what he started with Duke.
You've already proven that you are the best player in college basketball. You have nothing else to prove. Go get prepared for your career.
You have a commitment
Commits
your
tail.
University.
This kid has gotten hurt, and he has a multi. This is a $100. This is a multiple $100 need
if you are able.
This dude is a industry within himself. Take your butt. Get ready for the league. You don't owe Duke nothing. Duke and the ACC and ESPN has made millions of dollars on this kid already.
So let me be clear. Given clearance by the medical staff that you can play, that he can play, your position
I would say
is
thank
that
you,
he
Coach
should
K.
refuse
Thank you, Duke. Thank you, Duke. I'll be back in the summer to get my degree.
That he should
to continue working on my degree. But right now, I need to prepare for the NBA. And with that preparation for the NBA, guess what? This brother going to be making about $10 million a year. But if he tears his ACL or anything else, or trying to come back and play.
And he could do that in practice, or he could do that
But that's after he's getting paid. After he's getting paid. After he's getting paid. After he's getting paid. My thing is that this kid does not owe anybody the ability for him to utilize his talents for free. That's period.
We agree.
End of story. You can't argue with me on this.
We agree to disagree.
See, that's that old school stuff, man.
I'm old.
That's that old school stuff, man.
I am.
I'm tired of y'all old folks.
Turn his mic off.
I'm tired of y'all old folks, man.
Turn the mic off.
Y'all pimping these kids, man.
So we've got a great guest. We have a great guest. This show is
he believes
best
he talks.
of
He
the
believes.
West.
He believes like me.
Hush.
That these kids are being mistreated.
The Martin of the NBA. Hush.
Plymouth Rock didn't land on us.
That was Malcolm.
No, that's
dope.
Wait a minute, hold on. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The NCAA landed on us.
Anyway, we've got the best of West, David West of the NBA. Formerly
of the NBA. This brother's of the HBL, the Historical Basketball League. And he's going to talk about it on
R on Sports. Please come back with us. We'll be back.
I don't like the way you cut me off.
It's a fight, head bust 'em, head bust 'em. It's a fight, head bust 'em, head.
Riffin' on jazz.
When two friends get together to kick it
about jazz, it's called Riffin' on Jazz.
Catch us riffing on jazz every week right here on your favorite broadcast or podcast platforms.
Riffin' on jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN!
Hello, everybody. This is Tim Brown, 2015 NFL Hall of Fame inductee, and you are listening to R&R on Sports.
You can feel her coming at you. She's gaining on you, you know. She's coming at you. To resist her seems impossible. No.
Welcome back to R&R on Sports, Our Conversation. And today we're having a return appearance.
Man, he's a world champion.
A world
You
champion.
know,
A world champion.
You know,
yes.
as you say, people are multisyllabic.
Who says that?
I don't know. I done made up a word.
I don't know. No, I don't know who
That's
says
polysyllabic, right?
We are talking about.
He's poly champion this shit.
Just zip it. We are talking about two-time NBA champ and two-time NBA All-Star, and most recently retired from the Golden State Warriors, Brother David West. Welcome back to R&R on Sports.
Thank you guys for having me.
Totally.
All right, now loosen up, Dave, man. We here to have fun, brother. We here to have fun on your behalf. On your behalf. We here for you, brother. We here for you.
I got you.
You threw him with that polysyllabic mess or whatever you said. Whatever that was. But listen, man, here on R&R, it's mostly for us about perspective and information. So what we try to do is give our listeners information and insight from a different perspective. So you have just completed 15 years in the NBA. If this was a highlight, if this was the album of your career, give us the highlights of it.
Now, you know, he may not know what an album is. You know, that's kind of like old school. You know, if this was a CD,
I remember
if this was
from
a best
last
of
time.
CD.
I remember from last time. This brother knows what an album is. That's right. That's right. And a 45 too, right?
Right. Absolutely. So I would say, one, it would be just the opportunity to win. Winning the championship, obviously, man, and just being around, being a part of a historical group and, big time, just winning environment. So that was probably one of the highlights. Obviously, getting drafted and just learning my way around, trying to navigate, the ups and downs of being a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably, the last thing is just the success that I was able to have, on the court, off the court in terms of my family and, how I was able to manage and come out unscathed, relatively healthy, feeling pretty positive about what the future is going to be. So, for me, it was just a matter of, winning, having that experience and then obviously enjoying some of the ups and downs along the way. Having, people that I played with and competed against, become friends and,
right.
and things like that. So those are some of the highlights.
That's beautiful. What's a typical, during the season, what was a typical day in the life of David West on a game day? I mean, tell everybody what you guys did generally on game days.
Okay, so, a game day, we'd probably be in the gym by 9 a.m.
Oh, really?
Walking through or talking about what the other team is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Get our bodies taken care of, meet with trainers, shoot a little extra, and then mostly, guys going about their business, go home, get off their feet,
mm-hmm.
And just start mentally preparing. It's an all-day process.
Mm-hmm.
So you eat differently than you do if you didn't have to play. You drink differently than you do. Everything is different. Everything is geared toward, having your body fresh and ready to go at 7 o'clock when the ball goes up in the air. So, the routine is what it is. I mean, young players, particularly kids now, you can't, things have changed with the advent of sports technology and how early these kids are picking up information. So you can't really focus on two sports anymore. You very rarely see two-sport athletes. And a large part is because of the amount of preparation that goes into sports now.
Right.
And how much focus, young people are putting into it. So as athletes, we're sort of accustomed to being regimented and, being able to shift from regular normal day where we're just practicing to game day, nothing else matters but, being prepared to go at 7.
David, what was the one thing that you learned going from Xavier University to now? What was the biggest change you made in, say, life habits, whether it was eating, whether it was sleeping? What were some of those things that changed in those 15 years that you could definitely point at that made a big difference in your career and the longevity?
No, I mean, probably the first one is just being responsible. Understanding that I had a responsibility and that I was responsible for, basically, the weight and what my name was going to carry and associate with it. So I always held that in very, very high regard. How I was going to be regarded and not so much looked at and judged, but how I wanted to, to be characterized. And I always walked in the door with that first and foremost on my mind. Then, beyond that is just, the ability to make relationships, maintain, who I am, what I am, and, not have to relent or ever compromise that for any type of success that I was looking forward to or had, while I was a professional athlete. So that's probably, the main two things, and, as you get older, as you get, further along in your career, certain things shift, your focus shifts a bit to, how you play a little bit longer, how you maintain your health a little bit better, how you stay in shape a little bit better. Those are some of the more nuanced things that you figure out. But, obviously they can stay with you. Time management, being able to get your rest, and, when to say no in terms of, having to get off your feet and be in the bed.
What's some of the things that most frustrated you about the league?
Oh, well, obviously, sometimes, more often than not, it was the representation. Dealing with the media focus and the incessant need to paint players and athletes a certain way. That's probably the most frustrating thing. Feeling at times confined and not having the ability to, even if you say something, that machine can still generate 40, 50 other angles or directions that can drown out your voice. And, at times that became frustrating. Just what people were willing to report and what people were willing to project out on or into the general space at the expense of players. So that was usually the most frustrating thing throughout my career, just dealing with, that mischaracterization, not so much of myself, but, of my counterparts and just some of the stigmas that come along with being an athlete. And, for a lot of us, it's about fighting those stigmas and charting a different course and attempting to shift and change those narratives. This is
R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with the great David West, former NBA player. Now, you were saying that, I look at one of your ex-teammates and Kevin Durant, who recently kind of went in on the media talking about, you guys are making up stuff. I just met with one of the executives at the Memphis Grizzlies, and he was saying that a lot of the rumors and things like that are just totally untrue. How much of that is an issue with you guys? Just people, reporters are calling themselves insiders and just making up stories and topics and whatnot.
Right. Well, it's a part of this the environment, right? It's the incessant need for a scoop, for a scandal, for a story, for one up. It's a very competitive environment, so if guys can scoop guys on what's coming down the pipeline, they will. And to a large degree, if players shut off, what we learned early on in some of the media training is that you don't want to shut off, because once you shut off, then it just gives the writers the poetic license to make up what they want to make up. So it's a very, very delicate line you've got to walk, because on the one hand, you don't want every single one of your words to be misconstrued, but you also don't want to have to necessarily talk all the time and communicate to the media all the time. But if you don't, then again, you're running the risk of allowing them to control the story, control the narrative, And, we know how dangerous that can be. One of the like I said, the frustrating thing is just the mischaracterization, some of the same narrative and story that we constantly get about players and the stories that people choose to highlight, or that the perspective in which people choose to see athletes, and particularly the NBA and the black athlete, is something that is always frustrating, to witness. And when you're a part of it, sometimes, again, you're trying to fight the narrative. You chalk it up a lot of times to ignorance. I remember one time we were in a playoff series with the Pacers, and we were playing the Knicks, and all that, the Knicks were in Indy, but all that New York media had come to Indianapolis, and a lot of that New York media they weren't necessarily sports people. They were just New York media people following the Knicks, second round. They're trying to make it to the conference finals. And we had music playing in the locker room, and it was a pretty popular song, but it was something that for us we weren't paying attention to it. We didn't pay attention to the music in the locker room, particularly post game. It was just something playing, something's creating noise. This person blew it completely out of hand and started stereotyping our locker room and the type of people we had in the locker room based on the music that I don't even remember what it was, but it was completely out of left field. So for us, it was this attack on what you make an assumption out of a song you hear about a whole locker room full of people. And because that music was playing and you had never heard that song, or you might have taken offense to the language in that song, now you mischaracterize an entire locker room, really an organization, because he was talking, again, a non-sports opinion about the sporting environment and the level of or the type of music, but it was something that, again, he attempted to label a lot of us a certain way, and that's what we, often fight. And I think KD was talking to that point to a degree, like, whatever we say, whatever guys say, a lot of times is going to be used, and they're looking to use it in a certain way that sticks to a certain type of narrative about players and about athletes. And sometimes it's in regard to a particular athlete.
We are talking the best of West. That would be NBA great David West here on R&R on Sports. And we'll be back with more from David West after this.
David West, Golden State Warriors. Hey, this is Dr. J.
This is Shaq Adocious.
Yo, what's up? This is Ice Cube.
You're listening to a little R&R on Sports.
Are you telling me that Jesse Jackson couldn't brush his shoulders off?
Welcome to Funky Politics, Brother Cornell Belcher. How are you, sir?
I'm honored to be a part of Funky Politics. America's not going to fail because of some outside army invades us. No, America's going to fail because of Americans can't get along.
Now is not the time to hate or criticize. Now is the time to disinfect and deodorize. Like the incense, it's going to be funky because this is one funky show.
Funky Politics.
On the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
This is MJ, and when I'm not in Chicago hanging out with Scotty and the rest of these guys, I'm always listening to R&R on Sports.
Welcome back for more R&R on Sports. It's the best of West. We are talking about NBA great, recently retired David West of the Golden State Warriors.
Man, did you ain't tell the people where they can find us, man? Listen, everybody. Listen. See, on the radio show, we have a truncated conversation. But if you want to hear the whole thing, you got to go to our podcast. So you ain't getting the whole thing on SiriusXM or the over 100 stations that we're on. So you got to go to your favorite podcast provider to hear David West in his full glory. Now, what were you saying, old man?
Great commercial. David, so you mentioned media training, and both Larry and I are in the PR business. So I noticed about you and your interviews that you, and I don't know if they taught you this in media training, which is really my question, but a lot of times I see where guys get in trouble is when they keep talking. They don't understand the use of a period. And I noticed that you did understand in your interviews, you did understand how to use a period, and you would say what you had to say and then be quiet. A lot of brothers think that just because the mic is still there, they still need to be talking. So talk about
brother went to Xavier, man.
Huh? He went
to Xavier.
So when did the media training start in college?
No, I've never been formally in media training. So backstory. So my mother was the radio. She was the radio announcer. So back in the 80s, a lot of the black churches. So back in the 80s, a lot of black churches had radio shows. Remember, like during Friday night, Saturday. And so the church that we went to, my mother was the radio. She would introduce the church and the service every weekend on the radio.
Listen to you. Listen to you. Mom. That's all right.
One, right? Bringing in the church service for the people who were listening on the radio broadcast. And then my dad was actually a radio DJ. So he spun jazz records late night after he worked at the post office. So that was his second job.
So that's where you got your training, huh?
Yeah. So my mother always made sure, my father did too, to make sure that I could represent my own ideas. So that was something that I sort of always, even as I struggled in school, I could still tell you why I was struggling. You know what I'm saying? I could tell you specifically what my issues were. So my father always made sure that, I could answer questions the right way, particularly as I got more involved in sports and, in athletics. So that's where it came from for me. But the importance of it in terms of, as an athlete, is something that you want to work on. It's something that we need to push athletes in particular towards. Like
absolutely.
These kids are starting at such a young age. I have a program in North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Southeast Raleigh. That's a part of one of the things that we push. Our building is named after J.D. Lewis. He was one of the first black radio voice personalities in North Carolina. And part of what we do is we talk about being able to represent yourself, for yourself, and not needing other people to talk and deliver messages for you. That's something that we encourage young people. And again, that's something that, like I said, is something that should be necessary.
Absolutely. And I'm surprised. I am shocked and surprised that there was no formal, with the teams that you were with, that there was no technically formal media training, because that is extremely important. And from this reality, those people on the other side of those mics are not necessarily your friends. And to your point earlier, they are looking for a story. They are looking for an angle. They are looking for something to really hype and create audience and ratings.
Right. Now we always, it depends on where you go to school, or depends on what program you're in. But you may get a couple, like a media training, a media course. Somebody might come into you, like the Rookie Transition Program is like 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days, where you're sort of talked about or asked to figure out questions. But for the partner, guys are left to their own devices. People figure out very quickly who's best for the media, who's not so good. And you hear from the people who are usually, best at representing, at least in some part, themselves the right way. It's something that is definitely lacking. And it's definitely lacking from at the amateur level, or at the younger stages, where I feel it's most important that they get introduced to that.
Are you also left to your own devices with regard to financial counsel? Because all of a sudden, these young guys have a lot of money in front of them, and we all know that they don't always make wise choices, and they get a lot of them get separated from that money real quick. So, is there also financial counsel that's involved?
Yeah. So I think what you're edging at with the last point, and then even this point, is that So there's this big gap that exists. And the gap is you have these young kids that are pointed toward athletics at a very young age. And a lot of times the other parts of them, the other parts that they're going to need are often left to the devices of other people because they want the athletes singularly focused.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is you get to certain stages and you're introduced to, financial advisors. You're introduced to the stage where you get introduced to agents, right? You get introduced to being recruited by teams. You get introduced to signing contracts. And these things come in stages. But what happens most often than not is the player is not in a position to make the informed decision about who these people should be themselves. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, the families of these players are not informed about how to make these decisions. What you have to do is you have to depend on the devices that are available and the resources that are available to you and your family. Mm-hmm. And make decisions trusting the people that have hopefully helped you make decisions along the way. There have been better efforts made by the Players Association, I guess retroactively, in response to players getting in financial trouble and that narrative being constantly played. But the one thing I will say is that there is a group of us, and I'm included in that us, that are pushing against that narrative. There are some of us who understand, that we are businesses, understand that we needed to be more thoroughly invested, that we needed to invest in human capital, meaning give of ourselves to people. There are those of us who understand that there are levels as well. One of the things that I was very clear about from the very first day I walked into the NBA was that I was not a superstar. And I never got caught up in chasing being a superstar, being somebody that was going to be on TV every single day, wanted to be on every magazine cover. I knew that wasn't going to be my future. So being able to figure that out early on allowed me to plan and see the landscape properly.
You came to work with your lunchbox and hard hat on, huh?
Because I knew who I was.
Yeah.
This is R&R on Sports, and we're speaking with NBA All-Star, former NBA All-Star, David West. Now, David, we've talked about you've talked about the issues with NCAA and the fact that, I'm going to add this, that the NBA the NCAA and college sports as a whole has really been built on the backs of poor African-American boys. And what I want to know is, what's your thoughts looking back regarding the NCAA as well as how they've been able to make a tremendous amount of profit on the backs of these kids? You have any thoughts on that?
I mean, if you think about what college basketball once was, just the same way as you think about what a telephone once was. I remember when we had the rotary phone in my house. You have to go
That's right.
back, and then there was no mobile phone, the television turned off. I remember all that. To think that we are in the same place in other parts of our society was just to be foolish. And that's how we act in regards to college sports. We put nostalgia, we attach nostalgia to college athletics, where we're reminded of the past where athletics was to a large part amateur pure sport. Mm-hmm. But where we are now, it is no longer there. This system that we're dealing with now is one that exploits young athletes, particularly young black African-American athletes, and it takes advantage of a point in their life where they are of age to earn income for themselves and their families. If you think about the players that are on the basketball teams, if you think about the players that are on the football team, those players come from a demographic, and we have some numbers with the group that I'm working with, the Historical Basketball League, that we associate with this equation. Again, where these predominantly black athletes are producing revenues at a very high price, high part, and they aren't able to participate in any of those revenues. People often say that their education is enough, but we know through investigative reporting and through studies that These players, in large part, aren't being educated. They're literally at the schools. Everyone knows these guys are at these schools to play sports, to be athletes, and to win games in order to generate great revenues. And so, for a system to exist where those players can't participate in that revenue and in that market, we think is unfair and unjust at this point. So, I'm a part of a group, like I mentioned, the Historical Basketball League, HBL. We're working to create an environment where players can come in, immediately monetize their likeness, their image by signing endorsement deals, trading deals, apparel deals. They can engage and begin working toward their pro future. We're not just going to compensate them as athletes. We're going to reward them with academic scholarships as well that are non-traditional and traditional if the athlete and his family so choose. Those athletic scholarships will be based on what academic course or track the student and their families choose in the particular city in which they're playing in. One may be culinary art. One may be, again, like we talked about earlier, media training, time management training, and just basic development of some social skills, right? How to talk to people, networking skills, things like that. How to write emails. So we want to offer all different types of course studies to our athletes to accommodate their own personal aspirations for the future.
So when will we see the first class of the 2020?
Our goal is the summer of 2020.
Awesome.
Because our season is in. So we've added a twist to it. Our season is going to be in the summer, so that we can separate athletics from school, so that our athletes can play basketball in the summer, compete at a high level, and then once school comes into September, October, November, December, where they're assigned to personal trainers, skill developers, weight, strength and conditioning coaches, as well as their obligations to their educational track. And the way this is different is, as an athlete, I know that there's a complete difference when I have to just train and prepare, get ready to possibly scrimmage, than training and preparing and going to class and trying to perform in a game. So we're going to separate the two and give our guys and give this opportunity a new look and a new perspective on college sports and athletics.
We will be watching.
Hold on. One quick question I got for you is, what would you advise a player from David West, the retired NBA player, if you were talking to an individual like a Zion Williamson, what would you say to him today?
So what I would say to him right now is to protect himself. I'm not going to tell him whether or not he should or shouldn't play. I do know he had a knee injury. I wouldn't play until I was sure that I was 100%. I'd probably get a couple of opinions. With that said, my whole thing for him would be I would not take any unnecessary risk. Again, because right now, I've heard people make the argument about, Zion is getting exposure to the media. Okay, but people don't talk about the fact that he had just as many social media hits by himself alone than the entire Duke men's basketball team did before he got there the year before.
Wow.
So the exposure is there, and the mediums for exposure aren't necessarily being through broadcast television or broadcast basketball games. So, I would just tell him to protect himself because he's assuming all the risk at this point. As is a lot of these kids. Again, there's an article that just came out yesterday or today in regards to the Big Ten commissioner just giving himself another $20 million bonus. So the idea that somehow the system must remain the way it is, and the players, the players shouldn't participate in it because of some idea of amateurism that's outdated. We intend to, create an environment where they have another choice, where they have another option. Right now, coaches have options. Right, the coaches who are coaching these players can leave and move around as they wish. While they're at a certain school, they can work to get and improve their salaries. Same thing with the administrators, but the players are locked in to their commitments. They're penalized if they break those commitments or seek to find better opportunity other places. They're the only ones not paid. they're the only ones that don't have benefits that can reach their families. So, yeah, we feel like they need another option, and that's why we're working to create it.
Gospel and the best of West. David West, we appreciate you being back with us, man, on R&R on Sports, and we're coming after you again, man, so don't go anywhere. Stay close to us. We are thrilled to have you on again and look forward to your next appearance. You always speak truth, and we appreciate that.
And you're welcome here, man. You have this platform. You have this platform to definitely espouse whatever it is that you want to communicate to the masses.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, brothers.
All right,
be well.
You too. Take care. More from R&R on Sports right after this. R&R on Sports is proud to be on Sirius XM.
So what's R&R stand for?
Real talk and relevant sports issues.
It's racial and relative. We're brothers from the South. We can relate.
R&R on Sports on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.
David West, Golden State Warriors. Hey, this is Dr. J.
This is Shaq Adocious.
Yo, what's up? This is Ice Cube.
You're listening to a little R&R on Sports.
All right.
Is this it?
Back to get out of here. Yeah, man. We got to roll. That was a great interview, wasn't it?
Oh, man. It was amazing, man. I love that dude. From the first time we interviewed him to now, he's been solid, 100%. He's always been a man of integrity, and he say what he means and mean what he says.
You know what you can hear in his conversation and how he carries himself. He is tremendously grounded. And when he was on the first time, he was talking about going down south, how he was, a big part of his upbringing was with his grandparents down south, and I forget where down south, but anyway, he used to travel down there, and so much wisdom and insight and guidance that he got from
seems like
from
an
older
old
people.
soul.
You can hear that.
Yeah,
you can hear
it. Yeah.
And I think that is sorely needed and absent from so many young athletes, young African American athletes, and that's a bad thing. I mean, because there's so much at stake. I mean, their family's well-being,
absolutely,
a lot of money,
right?
And
so I mean, man, you know what? Once again, y'all, if you all want to hear the entire interview, you got to go to the podcast, and when you're there, rate and subscribe. You can go to Apple, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Stitcher, you can go to TuneIn, you can go to Sports Byline, you can go to KUDZUKIAN. You can go to all of these places.
Coconut shrimp, boiled shrimp, fried shrimp.
But so if you want to hear the entire interview, don't sleep on the podcast. But nevertheless, I mean, with all that being said, man, I'm very grateful that we were able to share this moment with Brother West, and really like what he stands for, and like that he's making a contribution. And he's also fighting this travesty that we call the NCAA.
But he's staying busy in his retirement, and that's a great thing, and he's contributing. And the other thing that I love that he said is that he is helping pour some wisdom and experience and exposures into the younger players.
So you know what?
That's what we need to do.
You know what? Over time, I think I was one that was raised in the civil rights movement, and you were one of these young millennials, because I have the fire of the struggle. You some old bourgeois. You some bourgeois. Brother.
You've been drinking too much of that Bailey's in your coffee.
I'm gonna have to call,
and with that foolishness, we're gonna get out of here.
America.
Don't listen to anything else he's got to say.
See,
we appreciate
Howard
you
got
being
his hair
with us
all
here
fried back and laid back. See, he trying to act like he got good
Please
hair.
be back with us next week. Y'all be good. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll be back next week.
Arrivederci. Sayonara.
You've been listening to a little R&R on Sports, written and produced by Howard Robertson, Larry Robinson, recorded and mixed in Memphis, Tennessee.
KUDZUKIAN.